I'm about to attempt something that might be a little too confusing on here, so if you're still having a hard time understanding how to shoot in manual with your computer, or sorry, not with your computer, with your camera, after this, then I highly, highly recommend picking up the book Understanding Exposure by Brian Peterson. I used that book along with reading through my camera manual to learn how to set different settings. Those two hand in hand, and I was able to learn how to shoot manual. That and a lot of practice. But I found this website that I think does a great job at explaining how to shoot in manual. It's called Canon Outside of Auto. So I'm going to kind of try and explain this for you guys, but I'll link the website below so you guys can go check it out. So there's 3 things you need to understand when you're shooting in manual. There are 3 components. There's your aperture, your shutter speed, and your ISO. So let's start with aperture. This is going to control the amount of blur or the sharpness that you're going to see in your subject that you're taking a picture of. So your aperture is a ring, okay? So we see right over here at f2.8, that means we're shooting really wide open. We're letting a lot of light come into our sensor. The higher the number, we see that it starts to close down. We're not letting as much light in. So we get up to f2.2. Now what this means is if I'm shooting at f2.2, if I'm closing down really small, though it's kind of backwards because my number is getting bigger, everything is going to be in focus. So you're going to get that sharp background, you're going to have everything in the foreground in focus, and everything in the background in focus. As I start to open up, so we go back down, opening up my aperture, let's come down to 2.8, you start to get that really pretty blurred background, which is usually what people are going for. So aperture is usually my number 1 priority when I set manual. I usually set aperture first because I typically like a really nice blurred background. Not always, but typically that's what I go for. So I actually usually go down to f2.0 is where I love to shoot, and I get the nice whatever thing I want in focus, and then I get that nice blurry background. And manual is the best way to learn how to do this. And really you need a prime lens to start shooting really at f2.0. You need a prime lens to open up that wide. So the next thing right here is shutter speed. And sometimes this is my priority. It just depends on what kind of a vibe I guess I'm going for the picture. So, or what's important. So if I'm trying to freeze motion, then shutter speed might be my number 1. So, for instance, let's say you're at a water park and your kid is splashing water and you want to kind of freeze it. You want to freeze the water up in the air, you're going to need a really fast shutter speed. So, at 1/4000th of a second, you're going to be able to freeze that motion. Now we start to come down and slow our shutter speed down. 1/60th of a second, 1/20th of a second, 1/6th of a second, 1 second. 1 second you're going to probably, well definitely, at 1/50th of a second you're not going to need a a tripod. It's shooting fast enough that you're not going to get camera shake, but you start to come down here and you're going to need something to stabilize that camera because it's going to get a lot of shaky when you shoot. You're going to get camera shake just because it's really hard to hold that still. So anyways, but let's say you want to shoot with a slower shutter speed, you're going to create motion blur. So say your daughter is spinning and you kind of want to create that movement of spin, you would use a slower shutter speed. You also sometimes need to use a slower shutter speed when you're shooting wide open. A lot of times, because that's not letting as much light into your sensor, you need to let more light come in. And so think of your shutter as it's like a door. It's going to open and close, and the shutter is what takes the picture. So it opens and closes. So if you're going really fast, that door is going to open and close extremely fast, so not as much light is coming in. If you're shooting wide open at f2.8, you don't need to have as much light come in because you already have opened it up a lot to that sensor. You're already letting a lot of light in. At 1 second, it's gonna be holding open for 1 second, which is a long time for a camera. So it's gonna be holding open and it's gonna be letting a lot of light in. So if you don't have a lot of light coming in with your sensor at f22, you're gonna need a slower shutter speed to let more light in. I hope that is making sense. So the last one is ISO. This is usually the last thing I set on my camera. I'm going to get more grain if I'm shooting higher, and it can create muddiness. So I typically don't shoot high. I only really shoot high if I'm shooting in low light. So say I'm shooting in my home and I'm using window light. All of the lights are turned off because I just want that natural light coming in. I get this high. I start shooting with a higher ISO. If I'm outside, unless it's night and there's not a lot of light, I'm shooting at a lower ISO. Typically I shoot at ISO 100 or 200. And you're going to get a lot cleaner of an image. Your colors are going to be a lot more vibrant and prettier. See how it gets kind of muddy in there? But your ISO is the sensitivity to light. So sometimes if you're shooting in low light, you're going to need to up your ISO because there's just not as much available light. Next, so those three things come together, and this is what you're using to get a good exposure. So you're going to meter your light. You meter your light in your camera. When you look in the viewfinder, so just where you stick your eyeball to see what you're shooting, you'll see a little numbers, I don't even know what to call it, little bar at the bottom, and it'll show you this little lever here. They typically say good exposure is at 0, so try and get as close to 0 as you can. I personally like to shoot a little underexposed. I never go below the 1. Never underexposed past that, usually. But I like to shoot a little under, and then I bring up my exposure in Lightroom or Adobe Camera Raw. I'll bring it up a little bit, and I feel like it gives me better skin tones. Whereas if you overexpose, you'll start to lose too much detail. Things will get blown out, and skin can look really bad overexposed, especially if it's too overexposed. It'll be too bright, people will look pale and washed out. So that's why I tend to go a little underexposed. But some photographers overexpose a teeny, but you don't want to go too far either way. But I will say it's easier to bring back detail underexposed than it is to bring back detail if you overexpose. So you'll need to look at your camera manual and figure out how you set each setting to create a good exposure. To figure out how you set your ISO, figure out how you set your aperture, and figure out how you set your shutter speed. They'll all balance out each other like this triangle to create a good exposure. So in the next video I'll show you how to kind of put this into practice and how to create a good exposure. It takes a lot of practice to really understand and start having it make sense. I promise you I didn't just read it and I was amazing at shooting manual. It's going to take some practice. But up at the top of this website you come over to play. If it'll let me click it. Okay. So over here you're gonna kind of get to practice what you've learned, what you read. So let's just say that my goal for this picture is to create a blurred background and to have good exposure. So I just kind of want to blur the background. So that means my aperture is going to be my priority. So remember, we need to open up, which means our number gets smaller. So I'm going to f2.8. So over here you'll see your meter. See, I am way overexposed right here. Down here is where it went clear up. I'm way overexposed, so that means I've got to fix my shutter speed. So I set my aperture, so then I've got to make my shutter speed change that so that I can get a good exposure. So typically, because I'm shooting so wide, I'm going to need a faster shutter speed. So watch as I move it. So as you, on your camera, as you change your dial, you'll watch this at the bottom of your viewfinder start to move. So right there, I'm at the 0 as I put it up. So we're at 1/750 7/50th of a second. I'm not very good at saying these numbers. And that, the ISO is at 160. That would give me a really good exposure, but my ISO is too high for my liking, so if I want to bring my ISO down, it's going to move. You'll see, oh, I'm starting to underexpose, so that means I'm going to need to fix my shutter speed again. So then you'll just move your shutter speed down a little slower until I get a good exposure. There we go. So at 1/250th of a second, I'm going to get that blurred background, and I'm going to have a much lower ISO, so it'll be clearer. But I probably, at 1/250th of a second, it probably might create a little motion blur. So let's take the picture and see what we get. Yeah, so there's your picture. So background's blurred, ISO's good, it's not really muddy, colors are still pretty good, and see how that blurred this. So the next thing I'm going to show you, so that kind of creates a movement. So let's say, okay, well, we want to freeze it. Okay, so let's come in here. So if we want to freeze it, that means our shutter speed is our priority. And remember, to freeze motion, we've got to have a really high shutter speed. So I'm going to bring it all the way up. And now we are really underexposed because I'm not letting a ton of light in. It's going super fast. So we might just have to fix our ISO here. Let's bring this down actually a teeny bit. We probably don't need to go all the way up. This will still freeze motion at 1/2000th of a second. We're going to need to bump our ISO. I typically don't like to go any higher than 1600, so we're going to leave it there. Aperture, we're going to be underexposed if I take the picture, which is still where I would still shoot at that. And we can't really bring this up, so either we take our shutter speed down a teeny bit to get there, or we bump our ISO. So I'm going to bring the shutter down, and let's see if we can blur that. I think we'll be able to not blur it, freeze it. Yes, there's a teeny bit of blur, but it's freezing a little bit better. So if we want to really, really freeze this sucker, we're going to have a really high ISO. So I moved my shutter speed up to 1/4000th of a second. My ISO is at 6400. I'm shooting wide open to try and let in as much light as possible. Just because we're really, really making that shutter speed fast. Really, really fast to try and freeze. And there you go. Froze it. Our ISO is pretty high there, so you get a lot of noise and grain. But that's how you would do that, to freeze the motion in that lighting situation. So over here at the top, there's a challenge. You can hit challenge and it'll give you things that you need to do. So we'll just do like 1 or 2. Hit challenge. Sorry, it's slow. Oh. Okay, ready to start challenge. Get a good exposure. So that's kind of what we did at the very beginning. So all I need is good exposure. So I just need to have that in the center. So let's say we'll just close down a teeny bit on our aperture. That means we're going to have a slower shutter speed still at 1/20th of a second. That means we're going to have a lot of blur here. And our ISO is really low. So we could still let's bump our ISO a teeny bit. Bring our shutter speed up a teeny bit because we're overexposed. Okay, there you go. We have a good exposure. Take the picture. We should, check. We did it. Okay, so let's do one more. Blur in front of and behind the toy plane and show the propeller's movement. So in order to blur the front and behind, that means we're going to have to shoot at a high aperture. And in order to show the propeller's movement, that means we need a slow shutter speed. So let's adjust our settings to get that. So put this sucker up, and we need our slow shutter speed. Let's go. Bring our ISO down. So we got a good exposure. Take a picture, and there you go. You did it. So you can use that and just keep kind of practicing. And the more and more you practice, you'll start to kind of understand how they work together in order to create a good exposure. And then what you'll do after you kind of read through this and kind of learn the concept, then you need to get your camera out you need to bring your manual out so you can know how to change the dials, so you know how to set your ISO in there, you know how to set your aperture, and you know how to set your shutter speed. Once you know how to set those, you're just going to kind of tweak them around. Remember, pick what's important to you. So let's say, okay, I want to shoot with the blurred background, subject and focus. I'm going to open up my aperture, so shoot it like f2.8. That means I'm going to adjust my shutter and my ISO to that, so I can get my light meter at the bottom in the viewfinder, so I can get it as close to 0 as possible. So give that a try, and I hope it works for you guys. If you have any questions, let me know. See ya!